So the Trump administration is trying to quell what had been a brewing revolt from his MAGA base over the Jeffrey Epstein files. This was a big issue for the right. The president told his supporters not to waste time and energy on this issue, on deceased convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And the White House released this statement yesterday, declaring the president's entire team would continue to work in, quote, lockstep, despite the reported feud over the matter involving Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino.
By the way, a feud that erupted because they were all saying the same thing. They all said the same thing. There was no there, which is actually, by the way, before we launch into this, that's also what Tom Winter at NBC News said. That's also, of course, Ken Delaney yesterday said there's just no there. But these MAGA right-wing influencers never believed that, and they used it to make a lot of money and to get people elected.
Pam Bondi would go on Fox News and say, I've got the flight logs, I've got lists, I've got names, I've got videos, and these are really sick people who need to be brought to justice. And so that's a little bit more than no there. That's a lot of there.
Well, no. Like I said, they've been saying this for years now, and talking about, you know, pedophiles and Joe Biden covering it up and Merrick Garland covering it up.
A lot of victims have been waiting for justice.
Covering it up, and and suddenly it's like, nah, never mind. Forget what we said this weekend. Never mind.
That's a little tough. Meanwhile, some high-profile Trump loyalists who voiced concerns over lack of transparency regarding the Epstein files are now apparently heeding the president's suggestion to move on. Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk yesterday all of a sudden said he's done with the topic.
Done!
Despite on Friday leading the charge against the administration's handling of the files at his organization's Student Action Summit in Florida.
Make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Raise your hand if it matters a lot to you. Raise your hand. So every hand of 7,000 people.
Everybody cares.
A lot. I said a lot. Every hand.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands. I've said plenty this last weekend.
Balls in their hand. I trust them. His message is trust the government.
No
deep state here. All that stuff he said about the deep state for a decade or two. No deep state. There is no deep state. All the things they said about how there's a moral crusade. No moral crusade. Don't worry about the kids. Don't worry about the sex offenders. Trust the government. Trust the government. And again, he said what? 7,000 people at his event raised their hands. They were deeply disturbed. That was this weekend.
Well, they wanted what was promised to them, which were the names of the sex offenders.
Right.
And any other evidence that would bring justice for the victims in this very serious case.
And when NBC News, when Tom Winter, when people like Ken Delaney and said there was no list, they called them liars.
Right.
Fake news.
Well, I mean,
no, actually, maybe
flight logs.
Maybe, yeah. Where are the flight? Where again? None of this has ever made sense from the very beginning. I was saying it in 2017, 2018, that, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was walking around in Florida, got a sweetheart deal, walking around in Florida, in and out of jail. It was crazy. It really still is again. And now it's crazy just the way that these people who have built their media careers and political careers around revealing the truth about one conspiracy theory after another, the Epstein conspiracy theory, you're now saying, never mind, forget everything I said.
A lot of victims that were waiting for justice on this. Fox News host Laura Ingraham yesterday scolded other conservative influencers for discussing the matter, despite being one of the conservatives on Friday pushing for justice for the victims, pushing the subject.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap. Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve. So I was going to get to that. How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation? Now, as conservative influencers were eating their own about Epstein, the president was stealing the show on the one-year anniversary of the day he almost lost his life. He made a triumphant appearance at a global sporting event. Meanwhile, Democrats keep shooting in their own goal, stumbling from one embarrassment to the next.
I don't think it was the Democrats who embarrassed themselves this weekend, Laura. I really don't. They embarrass themselves a lot. I mean, they've got that down, but not this weekend. This weekend, John Hyland, we saw a lot of MAGA influencers pushing this conspiracy theory and pushing it really hard. And again, of course, I keep bringing up Tom Winter and Ken Delanian because they've been saying for a long time, there's no list, there's no... But
it's complicated.
But it's very complicated. But when they say that, they're not saying there's no there, but there's not this magic list that you can just release to the public. But when they say that, of course, they're mocked and ridiculed by MAGA influencers who say, oh, they're covering up for the deep state, they're covering up for pedophiles. And then suddenly, boom, Donald Trump says, don't talk anymore, and Charlie Kirk says, sir, yes, sir.
Yes. There's so much in this story, Joe, and I'd begin with the fact that you'd think that Jeffrey Epstein, who was not a dummy, he was a sicko and a criminal and one of the worst people walking planet Earth when he was alive, but that he wasn't dumb. And, you would have thought that guy would have watched The Wire and learned from Stringer Bell that if you're running a criminal conspiracy, you don't want to put a lot of it down on paper. So the notion of a magic list was always slightly implausible. On the other hand, you had Donald Trump over the weekend sounding a lot like when he started saying that the Epstein files existed, basically implicitly in some of his Truth Social posts, and sort of blaming it on the Democratic deep state, that he was maybe trying to lay the groundwork for the release of some documents that he was then going to claim were the creation of John Brennan and Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton and whoever else, which is a normal Trump move. We don't know what there is. And so I'm going to stay out of that. I believe the reporting of our colleagues that there is no master list, some magic document. But Trump's behavior suggests that maybe there is something there that he's told Pam Bondi he doesn't want to have out in the public. Who knows what that might be? But the interesting point that you're making, which is that, you saw yesterday Laura Loomer, always a good window into Trump's id, basically threatening Charlie Kirk, saying, Charlie Kirk better get in line because there was no Turning Point USA without Donald Trump. There is no fundraising machine without Donald Trump. Making it pretty clear that Charlie Kirk's business is on the line if he wants to keep going after Donald Trump. And then, as you say, you saw the way Charlie Kirk backed down. My big question is, is two things. What does the actual MAGA base, not the Charlie Kirks of the world, not the Laura Ingrams of the world, but those 7,000 people who Charlie Kirk saw put up their hands at his conference, where do they go on this? That's one question. The other question is, how much kind of spillover is there into the non-MAGA base, but in this group of people who live in what people now call the manosphere? What we've seen in the last 4 or 5 days is on every sort of right-wing comedy podcast is a bunch of podcasters saying, you know what, I feel duped now, and Epstein is part of it, Iran is part of it, big beautiful bill and the expansion of the deficit is part of it. You see these right-wing podcasters who are soft Trump people saying, you know what, like everything Trump is doing is different from what Trump said he was going to do. Maybe we made a mistake. And that's not about the base. That's about that bunch of MAGA dudes who were not necessarily full-on MAGA, but who got kind of carried along in the 2024 election by the Rogans of the world. And I wonder what we're going to see, how this, as part of a larger picture, may be causing a kind of fundamental alienation from Trump and him not following through on a lot of promises he made in 2024.
Well, and Charlie Sykes, it's something that Tim Miller, like you and me, former Republican, it's something that Tim Miller noted, that the so-called manosphere hasn't been obedient, and they continue to ask, wait a second, why have things changed suddenly just because Donald Trump says they should change? But, you know, we always ask the question, how far will the MAGA base go in lockstep with the president? I think we got a really good look at that this weekend, and I actually think that John Heilman nails it. At the end of the day, it's about the money. Charlie Kirk has no organization. He has no fundraising. He has no audience without Donald Trump.
Yeah, let's start with Charlie Kirk. I mean, and Jesus, you know, what a pathetic toady, you know, being able to, you know, flip-flopping that quickly. But, you know, John has laid out some of the interesting distinctions. I mean, you have the MAGA influencers, you know, the folks like Laura Ingraham and Charlie Kirk, and then you have the actual base, and they're trying to exercise this amazing Jedi mind trick. Like, no, we didn't say anything that we said. You don't believe anything you believe. All of those conspiracy theories that we have been force-feeding you were completely false. Now, how will that play among these 7,000 people who raised their hands at the TP USA conference? But then I also think it's important to make the distinction between the hardcore MAGA base, which will, you know, probably fall into line because they always do, and the, you know, the MAGA adjacent, the Trump curious folks, you know, the Joe Rogans, the other podcasters out there in the manosphere, who clearly are having this moment like, wow, if only we had been warned that this guy was a complete con man, that a lot of the things that we thought about Donald Trump turned out not to be true. So, you know, that I think is going to be interesting, and I think that will have some resonance here, because right now, I mean, look, Trump and MAGA have had tremendous success in getting the base to believe anything that they say. You know, black is white, white is black. January 6th was a patriotic event. But they're in the process now of really aggressively telling the base and the rest of the country, you know, that ocean is not wet. There's no water in that ocean. And so, you know, how effective will that be? How many people who are sitting at the TPUSA conference are going to go, wait, you cared about it on Friday, and you're admitting that you're going to believe the government on Monday? I mean, the fact that we're even talking about this on Tuesday morning just indicates that this is not going away anytime soon.